For time. There'll be times I find myself thinking of committing.
Hey kids, settle down and get your bags. We're home now. Come on. You don't do that. No. Last one in's a rotten egg. Move. Koiki Mabo.
Nera, you've forgotten what today is, haven't you?
What's today?
Anniversary.
No, it's not.
The school has been running for exactly 200 days. Gotcha.
Oh well, we ought to celebrate. Get some of that pink lemonade, eh?
Sop, yams. Maybe cake with icing.
When Eddie tells Benita that it is an anniversary, she's confused because she's thinking about how it's not their wedding anniversary. However, Eddie is talking about the 200-day anniversary of the school. This again shows that where Benita is more focused on her marriage and family, Eddie is more focused on his community projects. However, she supports him in this and says we ought to celebrate.
Mabo household.
Koiki.
Mom.
Mau duduk nge tabagedim. Apa idali kim.
The scene directly after we see Eddie looking after the local families in Townsville shows that his own family back on Torres Strait Island is not doing so well. This is the conflict that triggers the rising action of the narrative, now that most of the major characters and their motives have been introduced. It also reiterates the predicament of Eddie's efforts, in that whenever he devotes effort and energy to one part of his life, another part suffers. In this case, his father is very sick and he's asked to come home. One of Eddie's sons traces a line with his finger from Townsville to the Torres Strait Islands, which reminds the viewers of the geographical circumstances of this story. As he traces the line, he has to stand on the tips of his toes, which shows how far away Eddie is from his home. As he does this, the indigenous music plays in the background, almost as if the sounds are calling them home.
How long is it again?
It's 12 hours in the boat from here to Mari, darling.
Oh, you lot! Don't get wet, we're going soon.
The montage of haircuts and tickets being sorted out on the table indicates that Eddie and Benita have a lot of children. 10 in total, but perhaps less at this point in the film. 7 are pictured on the beach in the Torres Strait, but some may be being cared for back in Townsville at this time. On the pier there are strong winds. The village of Las, where Eddie is from, is the first place on the island to see the rising sun, and it bears the full brunt of the easterly winds that sweep in from the Coral Sea. The wind that is sweeping across might even be Eddie's wind that Benny taught him about as a child, calling him back home.
No, this can't be right.
What's it say?
April 11, permission not granted yourself and party to visit Murray Island. Give me a pen, quick. Wait, yeah, turn around. They've been doing this to me since I was 19 years old.
Who's doing this?
Lauren, the council, all of them.
The wind also adds dramatic effect and exacerbates the tumultuous emotions as Eddie reads the note that tells him that permission is not granted for he and his family to visit the island. The soundtrack in this instance also begins to sound ominous, and the director cuts more rapidly during the exchanges between the characters to show that this is a very unsettling exchange. Eddie also speaks to Bonita tersely and uses her back to respond to the note, almost relegating her to a piece of furniture or a slave as opposed to a human being. Unfortunately, when Eddie gets frustrated, Bonita often suffers as a result.
Ako niyo po, take this and go back for them plan.
Bonita tries to ask questions so that she can understand what is going on and perhaps offer advice, but Eddie just yells at her. Even as Bonita tries to calm him with her touch, he cries out and pulls away as if she's hurting him even though she's just trying to help. We can see Bonita in this situation in the background of the shot with Eddie's back to her, suggesting that she is being neglected. She is then seen sitting at a distance from him in a shelter by the pier, with a point of view shot showing how she is forced to be a mere onlooker as Eddie receives another delivery of bad news. Eddie's separation from Bonita in this instance might remind us of how his hot temper and impulsiveness as a 19-year-old caused him to be separated from his parents in the first place. All Bonita can do is take a deep breath to keep calm. In many of these shots we can see land across the water. This makes it feel like the islands are so close and that it is ridiculous that this family cannot cross that comparatively small body of water after they have already flown so far. Eddie's face is shown in close-up with his eyes transfixed on the horizon, indicating his growing determination to get home. He experiences a sonic flashback of Benny Mabo telling him, "Young men go to the mainland and forget everything." As Eddie hears these words repeat in his mind, he looks particularly anguished. Part of this will be fear that his home is slipping away, and he is also probably really upset at the thought of his dying father thinking that he has not come to be by his side because he has forgotten about him. Eddie takes sharp breaths on the verge of tears, shaking his head almost as if to say, "No, Dad, I have not forgotten you and I will not forget." In the next scene, we see Eddie smoking again as he plots his next move. He looks up at his finished painting on the wall, which is Eddie Mabo's actual painting from real life, and he visualises his goal to return to the island. The boat in the foreground of the painting, on the yellow sand of the mainland, with the island in the background, suggesting that he is seeing the possibility and potential of arriving back home.
It's cruel what they did, Florin and the council. They just didn't deny me. The bees denied my father. They made him die without being able to look his son in the eye and fulfill tradition. Got this plan of one day going back up, setting up my shack up there.
The drawing on the blackboard with the words Merriam Man underlined underneath it is the same logo on the back of a student's shirt in the earlier black community school scene. This is a black hammerhead shark Eastern Island Dari warrior headdress used by Merriam men in countries and dance performances. Seeing the warrior headdress and the way Eddie stands in front of it suggests that he is ready to go to war. He is particularly angered because he says they made him die without being able to look his son in the eye and fulfill tradition. Culture and tradition is hugely important to Eddie, and he doesn't want this to be taken away from him or his people. That's why he spends so much time researching it and engaging in educational projects such as the Black Community School.
Once the kids have done their schooling and lived the old traditional way.
Eddie, you know the land's not technically yours. Legally, I mean, government owns it.
This is the pivotal scene where Henry Reynolds tells Eddie the legal implications of the land and ownership, that it is Crown land, owned by the Australian government, not the Meriam people. Reynolds was on friendly terms with Eddie Mabo, and in his book, Why Weren't We Told?, describes the talks they had regarding Mabo's people's rights to their lands on Murray Island in the Torres Strait. Reynolds writes, Eddie would often talk about his village and about his own land, which he assured us would always be there when he returned because everyone knew it belonged to his family. His face shone when he talked of his village and his land. So intense and so obvious was his attachment to his land that I began to worry about whether he had any idea at all about his legal circumstances. I said something like, you know how you've been telling us about your land and how everyone knows it's Mabo land? Don't you realise that nobody actually owns land on Murray Island? It's all Crown land. He was stunned. How could the whitefellas question something so obvious as his ownership of his land? When the camera cuts to Henry and Noel, the warrior headdress is almost seen next to Noel's head, perhaps suggesting that Eddie will need the expertise from these sorts of men in order to win this battle. It is not until Henry has this conversation with Eddie that he realises the full scope of the reality regarding the government's control and that something needs to be done beyond just protesting and educating, that the law needs to be changed. Eddie may be well read, but is not an expert on everything, and without the guidance of other experts, he may not have achieved his outcomes in the courts.
Well, if they own it, they can take it away.
Technically, yes, they can re-gazette it as whatever they like.
Now, this can't be right. We've been farming on that place since before you mob set foot on that land. We handed down from father to son. How can we not own it?